Hi, this is Grandpa Gene. We're making this tape with the help of my son-in-law, Michael Nepper, for Christmas of 1995. When World War II ended some 50 years ago, I obtained a 16mm gun camera that mounted in the wing of a P-51 Mustang fighter airplane. When the pilot pushed the button to fire the weapons, the camera came on with a time delay to record the damage. An electrician friend of mine rewired the camera to remove the time delay, and we built a battery pack that weighed about 15 pounds that I could carry over my shoulder, thus giving us a crude but mobile motion picture camera, which in those days was very rare and was really just a toy for the rich. At the time, I was still in the Navy. Most of the film you're going to see is 50 years old, and therefore the quality is poor. And in some cases, the film goes by very fast, like a Keystone Cops comedy. In some cases, I can't even remember the names of the people in the pictures, but I hope you do enjoy the film nevertheless. The first sequence of film was taken by my parents when they and my brother Ken took a trip from Los Angeles to Kings Canyon National Park and Sequoia National Park, near where I now live. Now, throughout these pictures, you're going to see a small figure darting in and out and all about. Now, that blur is my brother Ken. So, here's Kenny.
You're on.
This is the backyard of my parents' home in Westchester, near the Los Angeles airport. This is my mother, Pauline. The statue of Paul Bunyan in Sequoia National Park. There's a deer in that bush that will be coming out in a minute. The general store and post office at Wilsona. The General Grant tree. And Kenny. This is the Sherman tree. Kenny and my mother Pauline. My father Floyd. are searching for food. This is entering Kings Canyon National Park. Switchbacks going down into the Kings Canyon Park and the Kings River. The baby is Burton Robb, and the toddler you'll see in a minute is Robert Robb Jr. They are sons of my father's youngest sister, Dane, and her husband, Robert Robb. The baby, Burton, was named after my cousin Burton Hogg, who was killed fighting the Japanese in World War II. And there's Kenny. This is the Los Angeles Zoo. In the next scene, you'll see my mother and my father's oldest sister, Letha Hogg. More pictures of the Robbs. It's Aunt Dane and Ken. The man in the picture is Dane's husband, Robert. This was a big oil fire in the oil fields of Signal Hill. Now today that area is wall-to-wall homes and businesses below Long Beach. My mother's Aunt Maud. Ken in the window. Ken again. With neighborhood kids. The little girl is Sherry North, who became a movie star. Grandpa Gene coming home from classes at UCLA in my 1926 Studebaker. These pictures are of Kenny and Floyd taken in Carmel, California. My parents and Ken at Playa del Rey Beach. which was not far from their home. Watch that tongue. Ham. Whoops. My father's mother, Grandmother Bartle, is on the left, and his Aunt Margaret is on the right. My father's oldest sister, Letha, on the left. Grandmother Bartle was on her right. Aunt Letha on the left, Grandmother Bartle on the right. And here's Ken with Grandmother Bartle and Aunt Letha. This is Ken and Robbie Rob digging their way to China. This is Grandpa Gene, and on the right is Marvin Marker doing something we seldom did, and that's show off. My buddies and I took a friend to catch an airplane at the Los Angeles airport. Same old fog. You'll note the lack of security when guys can sit on the fence, smoke cigarettes just feet away from the old Goonie birds that were used by most of the airlines in those days. The tennis players, if we can call them that, are Marvin Marker, Jay Arnold, Wally Masuston, and Grandpa Gene. We borrowed the rackets, played one game, and quit in disgust. I'm in the striped shirt here in the basketball game. The big man is Gene Saban, who was to become the best man at my wedding. The others are Bob Lynch and Marvin Marker. All I can dribble with both hands. So we decided to try tennis one more time. The last time, I believe it was. We did much better in the pool hall. And here are Ron Conrad, whose dad got me my job at North American Aviation, Bob Lynch, Wally Masuston, Marvin Marker, Jay Arnold, and I showing off for the camera. You must remember that a movie camera was rare in those days, and people felt the need to do something special when in front of the camera. My buddies and I were really very close. When one of us had a problem, we all had a problem. Our closeness was really something special. It's Jay Arnold's car. For Christmas of 1947, my parents, my brother Ken, and I drove from Los Angeles to Coffeyville, Kansas, my hometown. On the way, we stopped outside of Paris, Texas, to visit my father's middle sister, Isel, her husband, Charles Ambrose, and their 3 children, Charles Jr., Marilyn, and Dane, whom the family called Little Dane. From the left, Uncle Charles, Marilyn, Little Dane, Ann Isel, and Charles Jr. Even grown men felt the need to show off for the camera. Here's Floyd and Uncle Charles. Ken again, bicycling across Texas. We also stopped in Tulsa, Oklahoma to visit some of my father's relatives, but I have no idea who they are. Of course, you'll recognize Ken darting about and doing some nice whirls. Now that's my great Aunt Blanche shooing the dogs away. And now my parents join the group. This is Ken outside Coffeyville, Kansas, hunting with my father's friend Jim Queen. Ken called him Oscar Jim for some unknown reason. In this next sequence, my parents, Ken, and I arrive in Coffeyville, Kansas. You're going to see members of my father's family, including his mother, Alma, who after the death of my grandfather married a Mr. Bartle, so I always called her Grandmother Bartle. Her first husband, my grandfather Burton, was an Indian trader. He built her a cabin in Oklahoma and took her there, where she was the first white woman to live in the Indian Territory of Oklahoma. You'll see her mother, Tilly Lehman, whom I call great-grandmother Lehman. When she was a girl, she used to lie in the window of her second floor bedroom window and shoot at the Quantrill's raiders when they raided Coffeyville on occasion. When we visited Coffeyville in 1947, the bullet holes around her window were still there as evidence that the Quantrill raiders shot back at her. In 1947, when this was shot, my great-grandmother Lehman, was 94 years of age. You'll also see my great-aunts Blanche and Margaret, and you'll see grandmother Phyllis in the days when I was courting her. In the first scene, the people are left to right: Grandmother Bartle, Great-Aunt Blanche, Great-Aunt Margaret in the rear, Great-Grandmother Lehman, Floyd, Mr. Bartle, and Kenny. That's Great-Aunt Blanche, Mr. Bartle, Great-Aunt Margaret, Ken, great-grandmother Lehman, grandmother Bartle, and Floyd. Great-aunt Blanche. This is Ken visiting our ex-neighbor, Mrs. Beeson. That's Coffeyville's junior high school, the Roosevelt Junior High School on the right, and Field Kinley High School on the left. This is Grandpa Gene courting your grandmother Phyllis. Wasn't she a doll? She hasn't changed a bit, so I changed a great deal to make up for it. These are two of Floyd's old friends. The taller one is Don White. The shorter man, I just can't remember his name. This is grandmother Phyllis and I chucking rocks in the Vertigus River. Hi. There's Ken with Pauline and I in my Navy dress uniform. This is Floyd, Ken, and I. Ken, Aunt Blanche, and me, great-grandmother Bartle with Floyd, great-grandmother Lehman with Floyd, and grandmother Bartle and Mr. Bartle in the rear. Grandpa Gene with an old friend, Jerry McCoy. And here I am with Phyllis. A photo ops for a Kansas beauty. I bet you never saw a grandmother look that good. My best friend, Bud Wright, picking on Phyllis. Now, do I look a bit cold to you? Well, I was. Well, maybe not now. I'm for sure not cold now. This is downtown Coffeyville the morning after a snowstorm. Here are the schools again after the snowstorm. Phyllis and I at Bud's house. That's Bill Alexander, my ex-next-door neighbor. This scene before the snow. Another pre-snow scene. I don't know how the film got out of sequence, but it's worth showing just to see Phyllis smiling at me. This is the wedding of my friend Jay Arnold. My mother and my buddies were there. There's Ken. Now this is their honeymoon hotel. And it appears that the whole gang went with them. Here's Ken feeding the deer at the Los Angeles Zoo. In June of 1948, Phyllis and her family came to California to visit. While her family stayed with her oldest sister Lucille and her husband Ernie Merrifield, Phyllis spent a few days at the home. Here we're showing Phyllis the hills around UCLA, and that is now a wall-to-wall office complex. Sunset at Playa del Rey. Phyllis and I showing off at Playa del Rey. Can you imagine a grandmother cavorting in public like that? Phyllis burying Floyd. Do you think he's enjoying that? Just laying out at the beach. Phyllis and I going to church. Phyllis riding Ken's bicycle. This is the home of Phyllis's oldest sister, Lucille. That's her husband, Ernie Merrifield. Phyllis and her mother, Ardith. Phyllis's mother, Ardith, was the neatest woman I've ever met in my life. Phyllis's stepdad, Russell Bear. And you can see when Ernie walks back toward us in the next scene, you can see he's an old ex-Navy man. Lucille and her oldest daughter, Sandy, and Phyllis. I think Sandy was Daddy's girl. Phyllis and I were married on September the 4th, 1948, at the Westchester Methodist Church, not far from the Los Angeles International Airport. After the wedding, there was a reception at the home of my parents. You will see my father's oldest sister, Letha, and her husband, Lenny Hogg. You'll see my father's youngest sister, Dane, with her husband, Robert Robb, and their two children, Robert and Burton. It was Burton that was named after Lenny and Letha's son, Burton, who was killed in World War II. You'll see my mother's my mother's Aunt Maud. You'll see Phyllis's oldest sister, Lucille, and her husband, Ernie Merrifield, and their two oldest children, Sandy and Lynn. Some neighbors were in attendance. You'll see my best man, Gene Sabin, and my friends, Ron Conrad, Marvin Marker, Bob Lynch, Wally Masuston, and Jay Arnold. Towards the end of the sequence, you'll see a powder blue 1932 Chevrolet, which was my car, but fortunately my parents loaned us their 1947 Kaiser to take on the honeymoon. Looks like Ernie thinks the marriage will never last. And mothers always cry at weddings. And there's Kenny on the right. There's that 32 Chevy. Phyllis and I took a 2-day honeymoon at Wheeler's Hot Springs, which is in the mountains just above Malibu. You probably didn't know that Grandmother Phyllis was a champion swimmer. So take a look. The honeymooners at the beach. This is our oldest child, Becky, at age 2, and David at age 1. That's Phyllis's mother, Ardith. Children called her Lala. As you can see, David was always very emotional. What are you doing to me? Becky used to get in trouble picking grandmother's or Lala's flowers. She got by with it in front of the camera. The baby's watchdogs, Prince and Sport. Well, that's it. Not bad for amateurs using a gun camera 50 years ago. I hope the film was meaningful to you. Some of you had a chance to see your great, great, great grandmother, and that ought to be a priceless gift. Merry Christmas. God bless.